Groaning and moaning to the irritating sound of his alarm clock, Kor Novason opened his orange, glistening eyes, reached over, and slammed his hand atop the metal wake-up call. With an audible clang, the ear-piercing sound ceased, leaving the older Novason brother awake and staring up at his ceiling. Monday. He huffed with tired morning breath whilst taking in his surroundings. Golden morning light, equations and blueprints littering his walls, junk and trinkets scattered about, a soft bed pressed against his back, and the sensation of another snuggled into his side. Turning his coal-shaded head to the left, Kor found his girlfriend, Sika, practically attached to him and snoring away in a deep slumber. The two of them were just barely concealed under a snow-white blanket sheet. They were both shirtless, wearing only their raggedy and crinkled underwear as a form of pajamas. It had been a rather pleasant weekend, Kor recalled, as he reached his right bronze-colored hand and brushed it against Sika's cherry-freckled face. To the sensation, the Sparkette with horns akin to that of deer antlers opened her bright, ruby-colored eyes and grinned with a buck-toothed smile. In response, Kor couldn't help but grin back and feel his face flush with color. Well, good morning, Grumbles. Sika greeted, whilst leaning into Kor's much larger palm. Good morning, my dear. You ready to start the day? Furrowing her brow, Sika slowly pressed herself against Kor even more and nuzzled her head underneath his chin. No, can we stay like this a bit longer? You're so warm. She asked in a dazed state, leaving Kor to roll his pumpkin-shaded eyes. Hey now, no need for any more funny business. We had all night. Come on, it's time to get up. Kor replied with a kiss to Sika's head before beginning to crawl out of bed. No, Grumbles. The twig of a spark pleaded as she clung on to Kor's upper half and was dragged out from her spot. Their sheet was now tossed aside, the bedding wrinkled beyond recognition, while they both now looked like two jumbled pieces of metal smashed together. Sika, Kor gruffed as he now sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his eyes. The morning light glistened off his golden bronze mechanical body, glinting in such a way that it made his bioorganic muscles look as if he had just ran a marathon. Shiny and bright was how people would describe it. He would have looked almost threatening if it weren't for his orange, heart-printed boxers that sat around his waist. Kor, please. Sika groaned once more as she wrapped her arms around the bigger Spark's waist and rested her head atop his left-hand shoulder. I know. I want to stay in bed just as much as you, but we got classes to teach. Leaning to his side, Kor gave Sika a kiss on the cheek before fully brushing her off, standing, and walking to the closet, leaving the Sparkette to sit in a heap of covers. Fine. It's not like 5 minutes would have made us any later. She huffed with disappointment before getting out of the bed and stretching. Unlike Kor's goofy pants, Sika wore a basic red bra and underwear. Weirdly enough, she had a mustard stain upon her left-hand shoulder strap that stood out like a sore thumb. Why did we stay up all night and eat glip-top sandwiches? My stomach is killing me. Sika groaned as she made her way over to a travel pack and began to take out her clothes for the day. On the other half of the room, Kor put on some proper clothes. First, he pulled on a pair of dark purple jean pants, an orange turtleneck sweater, and then some darker shoes with white laces. Kor was not like the other members of his family. His mother and father were knights, and his little brother was inspiring to be as such. He was a science teacher, an inventor. He wasn't one for brute force or fighting. Core was a civil spark with a big mind, aspiring to help his people evolve one day in some way, shape, and form. Patting himself down, the spark nodded and then glanced to Sika, who was pulling on a pair of pants. Well, when you overstuff your face with a small body like yours, that'll happen. Can't believe they ended the show like that, though. What a flop. Core replied as he recalled their romantic yet awkward night. They had stayed up binge-watching a show, eating takeout, while even sharing some tender moments, as all couples tend to do. To say the least, it was a bad idea. Huffing, Sika put on her last set of clothes and was now covered up with a red turtleneck and blue jeans. Round her horns, she began to attach dangling sets of jewelry that were small red crystal shards. Below, she awkwardly attempted to slide on some baby blue white striped sneakers, whilst nodding her head. Yeah, agreed. Before the two could share another word, Core perked up to the sound of his parents and little brother talking in the kitchen. The younger Novason sounded excited and spry, something that made Core rather happy. What are they talking about? He asked before approaching and allowing for his door to slide open. Yeah, I think we're going to learn more about Novarunes today. Right, Mom? The voice of Core's little brother, Void, asked as he himself walked into the living room. Looking at the kitchen, he found his dad to be cooking. At the countertop, his mom was sitting with coffee. And standing firm, the little blue spark himself held a plate of greenberry pancakes. Novarunes? Ha! That may take a while, little buddy. Core said aloud as he walked up behind his little brother and placed his hand atop his snowball-looking head. Perking up, Void turned to his left and set his eyes upon Core, who looked back with a comforting stare. Oh, I'll figure them out. I'll show you. Void assured towards his big bro, getting Core the snicker. And I have no doubt you will, bud. Remember to remain focused in any situation. Keep a clear mind and you'll get it with ease. The older Novason brother replied as he watched Void stuff his face with pancakes. Just make sure not to kick Mom's butt too hard, you hear? Core then asked as he raised his fist up for a bump. No promises. Void sharply replied as he returned his brother's gesture. What about kicking butts? Sika asked as she now stumbled out of Core's room whilst awkwardly getting her sneaker on. Nothing, love. Just giving my little brother some advice. Core explained as Sika stumbled forwards and fell into his arms. Whoa! She exclaimed, but feeling relief as her boyfriend held her close. Whew, thanks. The ruby-colored Sparkette thanked before kissing her love on the cheek. Hi, Sika. Void greeted as he finished his pancakes, getting the reindeer-looking Sparkette to turn and give a little finger wave. Hi, Void. Kicking butts today? She asked, trying not to laugh. Yup, he sharply exclaimed, getting Core's mom, Celeste, to turn her seat. Hey, don't underestimate your elders. I can still hold my own, little man. She boasted with a playful punch to the air. Elder? Mom, you're only 410 years old. Core laughed out, getting Celeste to roll her eyes, turn, and groan in her seat. Don't remind me, sweetheart, she asked while chugging down the last of her coffee. 410 and still looking amazing. Core's father, Nova, said, getting his wife to roll her eyes and blush. Oh, you. She gushed as the sound of a bus pulled into the Novason's front yard, one that was attached to an auto-changing subway rail that would zip around the city freely. Well, that's our transit. Are we still doing dinner tonight? Core asked as both him and Sika made their way to the front door, making finger gun motions all the while. Yep. Have a good day at school, you two. Nova called over his shoulder while now cleaning the dishes. Thanks, but we're the teachers. I'd rather you pray. Cora called back as he exited the door. Oh, come on, Grumbles. The kids aren't all bad. Sika tried to reason, getting Cora to roll his eyes. I know. Love you guys. See you soon. He finished with one last look over his shoulder, giving an ad way. Love you, honey. Celeste replied, watching as her eldest son boarded the transit and then went off into the vast and beautiful city. Stationing themselves within their transport, Cora and Sika both raised their hands and took hold of the dangling stabilizers that swayed above their heads. With their hands firmly grasped on, they both stood close by as the sparks around them began to do the same. There were some dressed in business uniforms, sportswear, and even some knights to his surprise. Cora couldn't blame them in all honesty. Armor the likes of that would make walking a hassle for anyone. Do kids really annoy you? Sika asked as their stomachs arose and dropped with each turn and sway their bus made. No. Yeah. Kind of. As a science teacher, I just worry a lot. You have kids that care about the subject, then those that don't and act a bit reckless. Sort of like, Cora explained, leaving Sika to respond with a half-witted smirk. Harmony? She asked. Yeah. But Harmony isn't as bad as some others. She much prefers your class. Looking out the window, Cora watched as their vehicle came to a stop within a busy sector of their city, home. Shifting skyscrapers moved above their heads. Green and yellow trees swayed within the breeze. Vehicles roared on by with tons of school kids making their way to class in the center of it all. Well, she is my top music student. Everyone's got a gig, love. Sika affirmed while reaching a hand down and taking hold of Cora's larger one. She really lives up to her namesake. With a shift and slide, the bus doors opened wide, allowing for everyone to pile out and enter the busy streets. School buses were traversing on by, cross guards blew whistles and waved their hands, all while tons of little sparks either slogged their way forwards or cheerfully made their way to class. Stepping out and beginning to walk along the school zone sidewalk, Cora and Sika marched side by side and took in the warm morning vibes. It was a perfect day, a beautiful start to a week, a sign that today was gonna be a good one. Have you ever thought about having kids? Sika asked as they stopped at a stoplight that flashed the color yellow and pink, which meant slow down in Salvaheim. We'll discuss that after we put a ring on it. Cora answered before the light flashed between green and white, meaning go. Well, when will that happen? Sika playfully asked as she raised her free hand forwards and eyed her index finger, imagining a ring to be on it. I would love for that to happen now, but money is tight. When the time comes, I promise to give you a wedding that's worth the wait. Cora assured, making Sika blush and wiggle her antler-shaped horns. And wait I will. Turning the corner, the teaching duo began to make their way forwards and entered the school's outer front. The building was large and designed in a wave-like shape, making the formation of a massive spark crest. Trees as well as garden beds stretched along for several paths that were made up in the shapes of constellations, all leading to the front steps. As the two reached the halfway mark, they both stopped and turned their heads to the right, seeing one of their fellow teachers journaling and examining some insects upon a tree. This spark was old but wise. His head was a cold gray shade, with only two long, downwards bending horns on the sides of his head. This noggin was wrinkled and aged, holding calm white eyes, a small mouth, and glasses to top it off. He was scrawny, standing upon two old, mechanical, clockwork-designed legs. His armor was donned in cream-colored shades of gray and tan, as this was his natural spark color. His name was Marok Cogson, or Mr. Cogson, as his students and staff referred to him as. Turning his old head, this spark gave a tender smile towards his co-teachers and greeted, "Ah, well, if it isn't Mr. and Mrs. Makeout 24/7. He called while stuffing his journal away and hobbling over. Good morning to you, Mr. Cogson. Still doing your insect research?" Core asked as the three of them now began to walk side by side, going slower, however, to make sure their older companion didn't lag behind. "As always, dear boy. These little critters have been my yearly study. Metamorphosis and evolution." The old-timer replied with a cheery attitude and wave in his hands. "I tell you, boy, I'm on the path of learning biological structures to help advance our kind in all sorts of new ways." Reaching out, Sika entangled her arm around Marok's to help him stay upright and not fall over in their stride, for he appeared to quickly be losing breath and miss his ramble. Thank you, dear. How goes both your studies?" The older spark now inquired, as they all began to ascend the school steps. "Oh, just lovely. All my little potatoes are learning how to play the flute. To others, it may be an ear terror, but for me, it's the early signs of incredible performances." Sika exclaimed with a small skip, making Core and Cogson nod. Me and my students are just learning basic potion mixtures. Nothing crazy or special. At the end of the year, however, I do want to do a lesson on portal technology. That I am interested in." Core boasted, making the other two in his group turn with curious eyes. Realm travel is a tricky system, boy. But if you ever need help, you know who to call." Cogson assured with a smiling nod as they all walked into the building and were met with a crossroads of where they departed. "I appreciate the offer, sir. I'll see you at lunch." Core bid farewell, leaving the much older spark to nod again and begin making his way down the hall. "See you then, handsome," Sika added with a kiss to Core's cheek, leaving her to walk off as well. Smirking, Core turned his head and began to traverse his way to class as well. It'll be a good day, he told himself. It'll be a good day. Good morning, class. Happy Monday this morning. Happy Monday, yeah? Core greeted seconds after the bell rang, as he gazed his eyes across a plethora of students who all got situated with mostly bored looks on their faces.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Novason.
Most of them greeted back, as Core began to stand and pace around the front of his room. Looking around, the older Novason took in the details of his teaching grounds. There were no windows. Instead, were blank walls full of posters, shelves, and tons of potion mixtures. The floor was a dim orange shade that had tons of sink tables and stools situated into them. Working utensils rested alongside desk drawers, a chalkboard lay mounted along the wall, with even a mechanical spark body standing on by, mimicking a mock-up skeleton in most other schools. Glad to see the enthusiasm, but I hope everyone is well situated and ready to go, because today, we're going to be learning how to mix the right ingredients to create, wait for it, cosmic fire. Core elaborated with a fake drumming motion as he slid his way to the other side of the room and gathered a bunch of materials.
Whoa, wait, isn't cosmic fire something we don't really understand?
A student asked as the older spark took a vial along with some encapsulated stardust. Turning, Core set his eyes upon the one who had asked and realized who it was. It was the girl he and Sika were referring to earlier, Harmony. This little spark had a light peach-colored head consisting of cream-colored irises and a mole on the right side of her cheek. Round her head, she had 5 dark green to-be-grown horns, 2 on her lower chin, 2 on the sides of her head, and 1 lonesome atop her head. The young spark's metal body was a dark brown metal, a bit on the darker end compared to Core's. She also wore an orange handkerchief and a pink horn penguin designed shirt. In response to her words, Core raised a curious eyebrow and began speaking again. Not necessarily, little one. Cosmic fire is the highest element within all kinds of flames. There is a natural manner to it. However, we only know the bare minimum. For instance, we know how to ignite it for only a short period of time. Core explained as he took out other items and started to mix them together, forging little stars within a strange cloudy liquid into a tiny capsule jar. Oxygen, heat, stardust, fuel, with a hint of reality matter. Core listed as he carefully dropped a glowing speck of gooey energy into the mix. Swirl it all together and BAM! You get a weak but small charge of a beautiful flare. Core boomed with a smile as a short gust of cosmic fire erupted from the vial's steaming top.
Whoa!
Most of the class exclaimed, leaving the older Novason to quickly seal the vial's lid and hold the now glowing capsule of energy up. Magnificent, is it not? He asked before stuffing it into his pocket.
Are we gonna learn how to do that?
A kid asked from the back, leaving Core nodding in response. Indeed, little one. But to make sure none of you get hurt, this will be a 2-day-long project. This Monday, we learn safety. On Tuesday, we get into the nitty-gritty. He stated to the disappointment of the classroom. Now, pull out your textbooks and open to page 76. Passage 94-47... What the... Stopping mid-sentence, Core and the class turned their heads upwards to the ceiling as a loud boom sounded to come from outside. That was odd, Core thought, as a moment of silence fell upon the class. Was that thunder? One kid questioned to break the silence.
No, you doofus. It was sunny out.
Another replied, sparking the class to erupt into a rapid and heated conversation. Hey, settle down, everyone. I'll go check it out. Just have your books open for when I get back. I'm sure it's nothing. Core exclaimed as he adjusted himself and quickly exited the classroom. Odd, he thought to himself, as he heard the sounds of the other classrooms chattering about the noise as well. It really did sound like thunder, the spark thought, but that was impossible. It was a clear morning, a beautiful morning. A new thought then dawned upon Core. Was there some kind of accident? Was it a bomb or a car exploding? The poor Spark was an overthinker, probably why he was so good at his science studies. No way it was an explosion, he thought, while walking his way to a school bridge that was surrounded by a glass window. From the moment he entered, Core looked to the sky and stopped dead in his tracks, seeing something truly unexpected. What the? He gasped in awe as what appeared to be a red and shattered crack was torn open within the sky. The sunny, star-filled space above had begun to fade. The wind appeared to pick up, while an immediate sense of panic began to arise within Core's heart. From his sides, both teachers and students alike looked too, all having the same question and reaction. What the hell was that? For only a few moments that felt to be an eternity, everyone stared into the abyss of red, watching as it got larger and larger, brighter and brighter. Core didn't know what to think. His first instinct was to call for Sika, but before any other thought could be made, a bright light erupted out from the tear. It looked to be lightning. Before Core could even make a facial move, the lightning bolt got larger and larger, heading right for the school. The thundering roar grew in decibels. Core's inner bones shook, his eyes grew wide. The next second after, darkness. Journeys Ahead 2, Lineage. Chapter 1, 15 Years Back. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. opening his eyes to the sense of a splitting headache. Core wasn't greeted to the calm skies or even the billowing storm clouds. No, he was rather greeted to an orange haze. Turbulent fire roared at his sides. Debris and fallen metal penetrated the ground around him, just nearly missing his body by mere inches. Glass shards, dirt, and more covered Core's now stained and bloody turtleneck as he tried to process it all. What happened? The spark asked himself while coughing out blood as he began to slowly collect himself. As he did, the first of many realizations of that day dawned upon him. The school. It was gone? The school. Where's the school? Core rapidly questioned as he shakily stood upon two wobbly legs. To his shock and horror, the spark quickly came to realize that he was still in the school. Or rather, what was left of it. What happened? What happened? Core continued to ask as he tried to wave his hand through the smoke. He couldn't determine whether the sky had been clouded over or if the roof was still over his head. He didn't know for certain, but that mindset was quickly washed away by another, more bone-chilling thought. His students. Sika. Hello? Hello? Core called with two hands cupped to his mouth as he began to wage his way across smoldering wood and crumbling stone. From his side, he could see the outlines of melted lockers, fallen over door frames. Worst of all, bodies. Glancing towards the ground, Core's breath began to shake and quiver as he saw the fallen forms of not just his fellow teachers, but students. His vision was fuzzy from the flowing dust and ash. He couldn't make out the distinct outlines of arms and legs protruding from the rubble, some too tiny for him to even comprehend. Oh God. Oh God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Core gasped as his walk began to falter. What happened? When the shades just... Core asked, talking like a broken record.
Ow, 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 ow.
A little voice suddenly came from the fallen debris, getting Novison to snap his head down towards his left. He knew that tone of voice. He had heard that cry once before on the playground. Harmony? Core asked as he made his way over to the sound.
Mr. Novison?
The young spark replied back as Core quickly found the girl, trapped underneath the table she had been sitting at. Harmony! Core bellowed with a horrified tone to his cadence. Reaching down, he took the large table and pulled it off the trapped girl, who had been sitting and cowering in a crouched position. Harmony! It's me! I'm here! Core assured as he helped the young sparkette to her wobbly feet.
Mr. Novison?
She asked again in a dazed tone, before huddling close to his burnt jean side. I'm here, child. Don't worry. Core spoke as he now scooped the young spark into his arms. I got you. And... Looking on ahead, Core felt his heart sink deep into the depths of his stomach. His classroom. It was gone, reduced to nothing but a burnt pile of ash and debris. Worse yet, Harmony was the only student he could see, or let alone hear. They were gone.
What happened? Where are my friends?
Harmony questioned with teary eyes as blurry shapes began to hustle on by them. Like phantoms from the flames, teachers, students, injured survivors, and many more were all rushing to flee the fire. There weren't many, but one thing was present upon all their faces. Fear. Core! A familiar voice called from the back. Novison, dear boy! Exclaimed another. Sika? Mr. Coxton? He asked, watching as the shambling forms of his allies emerged from the darkness. They were alive, but in a terrible state. "Sika!" Core exclaimed as the two went to embrace, but found that they were both carrying students. Core with Harmony, and Sika with a smaller girl, one the older Novason recognized from both in and out of school. She was short and 10 years old. She had golden eyes, a brown head, what could have only been described to be hundreds of freckles. The little spark wore a tiny overall dress with a black and yellow undershirt, topped off by a pair of fake play wings upon her back. She looked mortified and distressed, shocked and unable to speak. But Core knew her. This was one of Void's best friends, a girl from his little friend group, Bumbly, or Lee, as everyone called her. "Core, Harmony, what? Sika began to ask when they all began to hear the deafening sound of blasters firing, swords slashing, and metal tearing. Then came the screams. Horrible screams, roars, monstrous bellows that had them all looking around in shock. What's going on?" Sika inquired as the dust and debris began to fade, revealing the burning city around them. "Dear Darfion," Marak whispered as they all could now see the monsters of horrifying variety. Some were tall, colorful with burning glowing eyes, gnashing with razor-sharp teeth and bladed claws. They were unlike anything the Sparks had ever seen. Unknown monsters that didn't belong. They were heading right for them.
What are those things?
Harmony wailed as Core and Co began to step back in sheer terror. As if on cue, several Guardian Knights rushed in from the fog and began to engage the monsters. "Get out of here!" one cried. Yet, before the small group could move along, this knight was pounced upon by a crustacean-looking glitching monster and was snagged by the head in its claw-like hands. Knowing full well what was about to happen, Core and Sika turned the kids as well as themselves away, just as a sickening pop and tear came with a short-lived wailing scream. "Run!" Sika shrieked as they all turned and began to sprint in the opposite direction. Even Marak kept pace, pushing the limits of his old gears.
Is that knight okay?
Harmony asked, with tears spilling from her eyes. But Core didn't know how to respond. Everywhere he looked was in a state of carnage. Sparks were all running and screaming, fearing for their lives from this unexpected attack. Was this happening everywhere? Core asked internally. Looking up, he could now see that the entire sky was burning with static. Skyscrapers all collapsed in the distance as more lightning began to strike.
I want my mom. I want to go home.
The little spark in Sika's arms whimpered as her yellow eyes shook back and forth from a panic attack. "Shh, it's okay. We'll get you to your mom," Sika nervously assured while glancing at Core with horrified eyes. "What's happening?" she sternly asked through a tense whisper, just as a large, fat, and bulbous purple monster with wings swooped down and snagged a fleeing spark like a hawk. Before anyone could help, they were taken to the air, never to be seen again. I don't know!" Core boasted with a shout that scared the kids as a massive explosion erupted from their left-hand side. A tanker truck full of gasoline was tossed aside by an even larger monster, an unstable-looking creature with beady red eyes and needle-like teeth, with flailing tendrils that was dead set on anarchy. "Lutira's grace!" Mr. Cogson gasped as he nearly felt to have a panic attack right then and there. Snapping his head from both sides, Core knew within that they weren't going to last much longer on foot. His mind was racing with all kinds of thoughts, petrified thoughts. In the heat of that moment, another dawning realization came upon him. Mom, Dad, Void. Where was his family? Were they okay? Were they alive? Core had no idea. Not the slightest clue. Glancing towards the side, he locked his orange eyes upon an abandoned school bus. It was still running with the doors wide open, like the gates of heaven greeting them with open arms. It was a hefty vehicle, bulky enough to provide protection, especially for a group such as his. Bus! Cor shouted with a point, getting everyone to turn a heel and make a beeline straight for its massive yellow frame. As they reached the hefty machine, Sika and Cor first put both Harmony and Lee inside. Go! Stay inside and stay low! Sika snapped, getting the two girls to hobble in. Moments after, she and the other adults attempted to make their way inside. That was, until their inevitable attack came. Crashing in with a roll, a tall and rainbow-lanky creature slammed itself into Marak's side and dragged his elderly, bolted body across the ground. Mr. Coxon! Cor shouted with a scream and cry as the elder began to scream in pain. It all happened so fast. One moment, Marak was being dragged across the floor, and the next was much worse. Within the fraction of a second, this monster snagged the old-timer's legs and ripped them off without so much of a struggle. Parts and clockwork gears flew through the air as poor Cogson fainted from the sudden rush of pain. No! Cor shouted as he summoned two Nova Runes and threw them at the beast. Cor wasn't armed like his parents. He had no weapons, no blasters or blades, no fancy tech outside of his natural magic. Getting the horrific creature's attention, it snapped its body around and dropped Marak, only to stare upon Cor like a predator. Its one massive glowing eye glared upon the spark, making him wonder what he should do. He couldn't leave his friend, but he had no way of defending himself, his girlfriend, and more importantly, the two kids in the vehicle. Thankfully, before anything worse could occur, two sparks flew in with sets of green and purple wings. In a flash, Atlas Scrapeson and Evelyn Scorch's daughter slashed down with their weapons and took out the beast immediately. Car! Alice screamed, getting him the gas rush forwards and for Sika to stick her head out the window of the bus. Atlas? Evelyn? The older Novason screamed as the group of old friends were united. You're alive! Thank Matira! Evelyn gasped in disbelief as Cor rushed past them and found the torso of Marak. The old spark was still alive, but in terrible shape. He was now only in control of his arms, hands, head, neck, and torso. His legs, however, were now severed and mangled beyond repair. Bus! Now! Cor spat as he picked up Marak with a stern stare, getting Atlas and Evelyn on their toes. Cor! Are you kidding me? He's dead scrap! Alice hacked out in a cold sweat as Cor marched his way to the bus and began to aboard. He's alive! I'm not leaving him, Atlas! The coal-shaded spark angrily worded, as they all got within what could have been their best possible hiding spot. How the hell did he even find us? Novason questioned as Sika greeted Atlas and Evelyn with a sense of relief. Your family begged us to find you. They made their way to an escape portal just as we departed. We knew you'd be at the school today, so... Evelyn explained, getting Cor to turn his head with relief. They're alright? Thank Matira. He gasped. Where's the nearest rift station? Sika suddenly demanded as she went over and began to comfort the poor and scared little students, who sat huddled and shivering within each other's arms. 7 miles east from here, Alice replied while looking out the window towards the chaos. 7 miles of unknown terror. I can't believe this is happening. He whispered while Cor placed a healing spell upon Mr. Cogson to help ease the unimaginable pain he must be enduring in his lower half. Is this Judgment Day? He asked with a shaken breath before falling back into a state of sleep.
Are we gonna be okay?
Lee asked, sparking Sika to lean over and embrace the two sparklets. Yes, honey. We're gonna be okay. I promise you we're gonna be okay. She assured in her words, but gave a stare to the others that said the opposite. Give me the coordinates. We're driving the 7 miles. Cor suddenly blurted as he walked over and took a seat within the driver's side. You want to drive a big loud vehicle 7 miles through this mess? Alice asked with a stern tone as Core revved the engine. Flying would make us targets for whatever the hell those things were in the sky. Running makes us even more exposed. You two are the only ones with weapons too, may I add. Core retorted as sweat spilled down his brow. You'll draw the whole damn army of those things towards us. Alice spat as he snagged Core by the shoulder. You'd rather walk 4 legs? Core snapped back as his horns began to glow with an orange haze. Do you really want to get crushed? Alice retorted. Boys, Evelyn asked with a reach. Alice, there's 2 children and an injured old Spark. We don't have many goddamn options. Core snapped in an uncharacteristic but reasonable response. Took everyone aback. I don't know what in Matira's name is happening, but I am not going to allow these people behind us to die like that. Now sit down and buckle up. With a huff, Core turned back forwards and slammed his foot on the pedal, pulling the large machine out and crashing through the school fence, heading into the unknown.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Dad, it's Sika. Call me when you get this. I'm with Core and a few others. We're making our way to the Rift stations now. Please respond as soon as you can. I love you. I hope you're safe. Call me when you get this, please. Bye-bye. In a shaken vocal message, Sika lowered her arm after trying to contact her father and did her best to keep herself composed. Reaching up, little Lee and Harmony snuggled themselves in close upon the Sparkette's ragged and torn form, leading her to embrace them with shaking arms. At the side, Evelyn pat Sika's back, while Mr. Cogson lay dazed in his seat. Bits and pieces are falling off. He groaned in pain while trying to assemble his lower parts in a more efficient way. Hey, I'm sorry for raising my voice. Atlas gently apologized as he sat, lighting a cigarette in the seat next to Core. You're fine. I apologize too. Safe to say we're both under some, unexpected stress. The older Novason replied as he glanced in the rearview mirror to see everyone anxiously sitting behind. You get any words from King Orion yet? He then asked. No. Haven't heard a thing. Alice responded as he looked to the side windows, seeing nothing but ash and billowing orange smoke. Okay. Do you have any clue on what those things were? Core continued to ask as he knew Atlas to be a knight in training. He had hoped his old friend would have some information on all that had been happening, but it would appear that wasn't as such. I don't know. Nobody knows. I've never seen anything like them. You see the ones that turn the cars yet? Alice inquired as he cleaned some blue blood off his double-bladed katana. The ones that what? Core sharply asked, when suddenly their bus halted with an electric jolt. Ah! What the hell? Evelyn shouted with fright, while Sika held the little ones close. We hit something? What was that? Mr. Cogson groaned as Evelyn quickly picked him up with her tail. Groaning from the jolt, Core began to rapidly stomp the pedal, only for nothing to react in response. Something had hit them and cut the engine dead. No! The older Novason ranted as a set of heavy footfalls befell them from all round. Falling to silence, everyone in the bus held their mouths shut as a sudden humming came from the abyss of ash. Thump, thump, thump came sets of footfalls as everyone remained as still as the godly statues that littered their world. Knock, knock. An unknown being spoke as its shadowed form began to walk alongside the bus. The outline of a sharp and lanky body could be seen through the windows, which nearly made the children scream. With quick instinct, Sika covered their mouths as the monster outside began to scratch its long and glassy red finger along the glass. I know you're in there, and you're all alone. The monster taunted, sparking Atlas to activate a massive arm blaster upon his right side. No! Core harshly whispered while placing a hand to the weapon's barrel. No! He repeated, now in a softer tone of voice, as whatever was outside began to move along. 1 10-second passed, another. 3, 4, 5. Silence. Absolute silence.
Is the monster gone?
Lee questioned. In a flash of furious motion, the roof of the bus was suddenly torn away with a sickening metallic screech. Peering inside appeared a large, blood-red, glass-bodied, golden-eyed, cube-headed monster that glared upon everyone to their absolute horror.
Well, 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 look what we have here! Some little sparks to burn down to the bone! Good day, good day!
The massive monster bellowed with a heckler-sounding voice as he tore the bus in half and exposed the group of survivors into the open. Oh my god! Oh my god! Sika cried at landfall, while Atlas began to open fire upon the tyrant. Chuckling, the cube-headed enemy swung his arm down with such force it knocked Atlas aside and into a metal-tearing sprawl. Honey! Evelyn shrieked as she turned Mr. Cogson away and then used the tip of her tail to open fire upon the monster. Like Alice's assault, this strike had no effect upon the blood-red being, who charged his eye and took one hard shot upon Evelyn. In a flash of yellow, her face and neck were struck with a powerful blast of the eye's energy that sent her and Cogson flying back. As Evelyn hit the ground, she started to wail and shriek like a banshee, screaming and hollering in agony whilst grabbing her face that steamed with smoke. Evelyn! Cora cried with horror at what had happened before getting snagged into the monster's claws. Car! Sika wailed as she hid behind a turnover vehicle with the two kids.
An orange one? Now that's rare! Can't wait to use your eyeballs as my own personal jewels!
The glitching monstrosity bellowed as he began to charge up his flat glowing eye. In a state of panic, Core did the only thing he could think of. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out the vial of cosmic fire, then smashed it into the beast's eye. In a bright flash of orange light, this small glass container released a mighty cosmic blast that sent the monster stumbling and Core dropping. Yet, this didn't come without fault. On the left side of Core's face, a sharp burn scar formed, right above and below his eye, making it look as though he had been slashed with a knife. Hitting the ground, Core was left in a daze. Instinctually, he reached up and clenched his open wound while a sharp ringing blared in his pounding head. He could barely see out of his left eye, for it was a mix of blurry shapes and stars. Was he going blind? Surely not, he told himself, before whirling around and watching the monster stumble.
Oh, my eye! God! Do you have any idea how much that hurts?
The demon screamed before turning and marching with sharp steps towards Core. This was it, he told himself. He was about to die. He was going to die right there and then in a horrible way. Yet, before he could meet his fate, all the downed sparks suddenly watched as a golden rocket soared in through the smoke and struck the monster in its back. In an explosive flash, a massive hole was torn open through the enemy's chest, making him shout and roll around. Once again, came another rocket, this time striking the monster in the right side of its cube-shaped head. Shattering apart into 1,000 pieces, the beast fell backwards and crashed hard into the torn open bus, all as their mysterious savior emerged from the flames. Approaching came yet another spark. He was massive and bulky as a character, with a thick chest, arms, and thunderous legs. His body color was that of low, saturated yellows. He wore scuffed boots, dark pants, and a torn t-shirt. Atop his head were 3 horns, or what should have been. A natural one was sticking out on the left, another upon his forehead, and then a broken bleeding one on the right. In that moment, everyone realized that this spark's face, his entire right side, was charred and burned nearly to the bone. This spark looked awful, as he stood with his right arm contorted into a gigantic barrage cannon, steaming from the missiles that were fired. His left arm, however, was missing a hand.
Come on! There's a Star Slasher up ahead! We can use it to get out of here!
This mysterious spark shouted as Core's group all stood in response.
I can't see! It burns! It burns!
Evelyn gasped through a hoarse breath as she shielded her face with Atlas now by her side.
Easy, lass. Easy.
Mr. Cogson weakly tried to say as Evelyn held him tight around her tail.
God, what are you? Oh my God! Your face! Your face!
Sika gasped in horror as Core's left eye continuously bled with gushing orange spark essence.
I'm fine. Are the kids okay?
He asked as Sika now carried the petrified Harmony and Lee.
Come on, what are you waiting for?
The large yellow spark spat as he glared upon everyone with a teary, bright, purple-eyed stare.
Who are you?
Core asked as they all started moving forwards in a tired, slogging motion.
The name's Talos. Talos Scornson. I was preparing to flee when I saw you all getting attacked.
This new spark explained as the outline of a large craft was seen stationed within a burning ash-filled environment. They had been attacked near a launch site for aircrafts. Star Slashers, Core recalled. Ships used by the Knights to realm travel. Classified vehicles basic sparks like him weren't allowed to use. Before another word could be shared, the body of the large monster began to slowly reform itself. The shattered glass upon the ground started to levitate and be magnetically pulled towards the cube-headed creature that angrily began to growl in an awakening tone.
Come on, hurry!
Talos spat before turning and rushing to the massive craft. The Star Slasher was a long and narrow vessel, having gargantuan levitating rings around its base that would allow for it to jump between dimensions. Its color palette was made out of white steels and bronze golds, all the while being topped off with tinted blue windows and shimmering spark crests. Together, the strong carried their injured and the young, as they too made it to the craft. As the door sealed shut, Talos, in a panicked silence, ran to the front of this machine and began to pilot it.
Rest, love. Rest.
Alice pleaded as both Evelyn and Mr. Cogson finally sat down in passenger seats. Evelyn, Core and the others could hardly look at her. Her face was burnt. Her skin was torn and blistered. Her eyes were watering with glossy stares. Even her neck had been split open from the blast, revealing the mechanical and energized organics underneath.
I can't see! I'm blind!
Evelyn screamed over and over, while the 2 children just cried.
Come on! Come on!
Talos gruffed as they began to rise higher and higher into the sky. The bulbous winged monsters began to swarm the craft, but the now rotating ring around its form started to take them out from its sheer velocity. Shaking in horror, Core looked out the side window and took in the sight of Salvaheim. If he were being truthful, it was as though he were looking down into the depths of hell itself. Fire, slaughter, monsters. The monster. Looking up with a reformed body, the cube-headed monstrosity stood with annoyance in its eye as they all got higher and higher. Before they disappeared behind the clouds, Cora could see the cube reach behind its back then pull out something that made his heart sink. Raising his hand out, this cube entity began to wave at him with a golden spear, his father's spear.
No! No!
Kor shouted as he pressed himself against the window.
No! 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 No!
He started to panic as Sika tried to ask what was wrong.
See you around,
the cube whispered as he then threw the spear headfirst into the dirt. Then a flash, the Star Slasher surged to life, then blasted forwards, leaving Salvaheim and entering to the deep dark abyss of space within another dimension. All the while, Kor began to punch and scream at the glass as every single spark tried to process what had happened in the last hour. All Kor, deep inside, knew that his father, mother, and brother had not survived. Time felt the blur after escaping Salvaheim. Seconds turned to minutes, minutes turned to hours, and hours turned to a day, 2 days. Nobody knew. For when you were in space, time felt non-existent. It was a horrific moment in time, trying to understand, trying to comprehend, all while mending and attempting to heal the wounds inflicted upon their souls. Thankfully, given the craft they had taken, there were plenty of medical supplies on board. In a tired and depressed slump, Kor sat against Sika, with several bandages covering his left eye. Sika herself was fine outside of a few cuts and bruises that had already managed to heal. In her lap, Harmony sat asleep in a huddled ball, while Kor felt Lee clinging onto his arm. Little Lee had barely spoken since they left, but found comfort in the only person she really knew. With remorse and similar feelings, Kor raised his arm up and pulled the little one in close, making her sniffle and silently start to weep once again.
Shh. It's okay. It's okay, Lee. I'm here.
The elder Nova Son assured as a small spark turned and wrapped her arms around his form. Glancing his eyes upwards, Kor gazed upon Evelyn, who was now attached to several medical devices. Her entire head was safely concealed within a massive liquid chamber that glowed with a green hue. Her face wasn't visible within, but it was meant to help push the healing process faster, especially when it came to vitals such as one's face. Supply cables and healing spells were also placed around her neck, as for some unknown reason, her body was struggling to self-heal. At Evelyn's side, Alice sat, holding onto her hand with massive bags seeping beneath his eyes. Off to the side, Mr. Cogson rested while tinkering with his lower half. Barak had a much older body design. It was steampunk in nature, not as integrated as the other Spark's more modern-day designs. The way he was split hurt, yes, but given the design, nothing vital was fully damaged. The only downside was the ever-present pain, and that he also had to build a new set of legs. Then, there was Talos, sitting on the co-pilot seat and looking out at the vast sea of stars. Like Kor, he decided to bandage up his face, but gave little interaction. He was silent and tense. With a small gesture, Kor stood with Lee in his arms and approached. In a slow march, he made his way forwards and stood a few feet behind the yellow-faced Spark. I don't think we ever said thank you, he said, but Talos gave Kor no real mind. In fact, he appeared to be looking upon some kind of photo. Curiously, Cord tried to look over his larger spark's shoulder, but Talos quickly hid this photo with an audible grunt. Cord wasn't sure what to say, or knew how to respond. The last few days had been rough. They tried to reach for communication, but nobody responded. Salvaheim was as though it was stripped right off the map. They couldn't get a read on whether it was safe or not to go back. At that current state, Cord and the rest began to feel as if that were the truth. Were all the sparks gone? Surely there had to be others, many others such as them, that were lost somewhere out there. But where? Huffing, the older Novuzone took a seat beside Talos and looked out upon the never-ending sea of stars. It was all too much to bear. Nobody knew what had happened, what attacked, or why. All they had now were the physical and mental scars, along with lingering fear. Would they come for them? Hunt them down like dogs? Or was this a one-off situation? It was too early to tell, too soon to say. Wincing again, Cord reached into his pocket and pulled out an old family photo, one from when they had gone camping. The faces of his mother, father, and brother all stared back at him with wide expressions, leaving Cord feeling a mixture of rage and sorrow. They were gone. Just thinking that felt wrong. They were gone. Lowering his hand, Cord leaned back in his seat and slowly closed his eyes, waiting to just rest on the matter, to just sleep. Sleep. For a long couple of seconds, Cord sat there with Lee in his arms in a terrible wave of thought, trying his best to not cry aloud. Until a light began to arise from the darkened space. A light so bright that most immediately thought a star had just exploded.
What the hell?
Talos asked with an upright jolt, while a loud gasp came from all those on board. Opening his eyes, Cord was instantly greeted to what he thought to have been a fire, but instead was merely a shimmering light that looked to engulf the front end of the ship. "What is that?" Sika asked, while holding the scared Harmony close. A comet?" Alice inquired, as the light continued to get brighter and brighter.
"Everyone, stay back!"
Cord called as both him and Talos backed away from the window. What was it? They kept asking. What was it? How could this be? A disembodied voice suddenly spoke from the light, echoing through the abyss and halting everyone in their places. How could such a tragedy befall my beautiful, perfect sparks? Blinking in stunned silence, Cord and the others slowly began to reapproach the ship's front window to gaze at this blooming ball of golden energy that appeared to be getting closer. Reaching a shaking hand out, Cord pressed a button upon the ship's control deck, a comlink that would allow a speaker to talk through the ship's front end. Cord remembered his father showing him this once when he was very little.
"Who are you? State your purpose,"
he asked with a visible cold breath leaving his mouth. Fear not, my dears, for I am a friend. The light replied as it began to grow closer and closer.
"Gonna need to see a bit more to believe that,"
Cord sharply replied as Sika nervously held onto his arm. I understand your fear. I know you are petrified. But fret not, for I have been with you all every single step of the way. I am here to help. The light explained as its form began to take shape, going from a blurry haze to an almost humanoid form with wings.
"We beg your pardon?"
Talos gruffed as the light continued to get closer and closer. My creations,
My little ones, a great tragedy has befallen us all. A tragedy we could not have predicted. Many have fallen, so many slain. But I believe we can change what has happened and undo this damage that has been inflicted upon our souls.
The voice boomed as its now feminine shape appeared before all in a heavenly golden outline of light. She was tall and beautiful, held 3 sharp horns atop her head with a wingspan that nearly dwarfed the Star Slasher itself. They couldn't discern her smaller details within the light, but they could see a pair of white, comforting eyes gazing upon them. No, it couldn't be, they all thought. Who are you? Kor asked as he took a step forward and placed his hand upon the glass window. Reaching forwards as well, the angelic figure did the same, pressing her palm upon the very same glass Kor had, making their hands look as though they were touching. Looking up, this being, this angel, gave a soft, saddened, but compassionate stare before speaking aloud and making everyone's souls hit the floor. I am the matter birth. I am the light and the dark. I am Matira.